Weekend. Okay, here I am. Hello, and greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the second Roundtable Panel, GatherVerse AI Summit 2025. And I must commend the previous talk sessions and the previous panel and the opening keynote. Everything was just amazing. And this is just a continuum to what we've listened so far. So my name is Denge Tao. I'm the Communications Director for GatherVerse. And with me, I have a roster of amazing panelists who are going to take us deeper into the ethical dimensions of things. Dear panelists, I ask you to introduce yourselves, and I request that you be brief. Tell us who you are and what do you do, and then we can jump right into the topic of today. We have a lot to uncover. I'll start with you, Alison. You're closer to me. Please go.
Hi, I'm Allison Morano. Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. I love these GatherVerse events, and I'm always very happy to participate. I am the founder of the Metaverse Chamber of Commerce as one of the projects that I've started since the advent of XR and the AI and the tech. I'm also currently a graduate student of international relations at American University, graduating this year, which I think lends itself to all of this that we're talking about with cultural and multicultural interactions and being aware of responsibility and understanding the world. I think that this is making the world much smaller, AI, and we have to consider it in its entirety. My third hat is political and election policy and also running elections. So I am also very into policy and electoral politics, and all of that has to do with messaging. And I believe all of this has to do with messaging. So thank you very much for inviting me.
All right, you're welcome. You're in the right panel. Alan, let's go to you.
Yes, hi. My name is Alan. I'm the founder of a nonprofit called Studio Bahia. We develop therapeutic virtual reality. We develop it with hospitals, with institutions. We also manufacture Lily VR. This is our product. This is our team in 7 factories in Bangladesh and China. And so we sell these to hospitals. So it's VR headsets inside these lunch cases. And so people in hospitals run around with these and so on. And it's a little kit. It's got a bandana headset, the VR headset, kind of a Google Cardboard, but a nice one. And so our team works in healthcare and VR. I'm very happy to be here with you. Thank you.
We're happy to have you once again. Brandon, over to you.
Hey, everyone. My name is Brandon Zhoff, and I founded an organization called Rudy AI, and Rudy stands for Responsible Use of Digital Intelligence. And so we do a lot of AI adoption, AI integration and strategy with a big focus point on literacy. So we sit right in that kind of technology, education, and social impact sector. So I'm really happy to gather with all of you and talk about this.
Well, we welcome you. Vivian, you're next.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. I'm based out of San Francisco. I lead a design studio where we help startups build AI products and services, chatbots, agents, the works that we've been hearing about these days, including some new ones with DeepSeek and the other announcements that you've been seeing. Sorry about that. It's been raining very heavily here. I got wet in there. Nice meeting.
Nice having you too. May you get well too. Thomas, over to you.
Thomas R. Wilson. I run R&H Creative Advocacy and Storytelling. Like our name says, we use a lot of creative means, from technology to art to a wide variety of tactics to help serve those in need. I have a specialty with the neurodiverse community, but I also heavily work within the idea of using technology as a means to help humanity. On top of that, we also use a lot of digital products to create tools and assets for those seeking sensory friendly care. If you don't know what that is, it just means things that you're not visually, emotionally, or mentally overstimulating. I'm sure we can get into more of that. I don't want to keep talking and talking and take up the whole time. But the biggest focus is really understanding how we as people can move forward, innovate programs, and make sure that no one is left behind.
Wow, we're happy to have you here. Our dear audience, please feel free to interact with our panelists as we discuss this roundtable panel on AI and the human condition, examining the ethical dimensions of innovation. Shall we begin, dear panelists? That's a yes, I take it. I will start with you, Alison, and anyone can also chime in on this. Should ethical standards for AI be universal or tailored to individual regions and cultures? And just to add on that, I personally believe AI might be global. When it comes to culture, culture is a diverse, super diverse. I come from a continent that is Africa, whereby my country alone, we have over 54 tribes with different cultures each. So I can imagine when we are saying having a tailored, universal standard for AI in such a diverse location for me, it doesn't click quite well. But I want to learn from you. I want to hear from you. And we will start with you. Alison, please share your thoughts.
Hi. So I come at this from two different viewpoints. I think from an ethical standard, the standard should be universal. And I believe that that's because there is a humanity element, and ethics are ethics. They may be different for different people, but overall, when you're looking at guardrails and standards, you should have a set of standards that go into the beginning of how you're going to design an AI or whatever it is going to do. When you get down to cultural or regions, then you start to diverse a little bit. And it is important that you build in some of the regional culture and the regional ethics that are, as you said, in your continent, there's just hundreds and hundreds. And even here throughout the United States, we've got thousands of different cultures all building together. So it needs to be two-pronged. You do need an overall set of standards that try to impart the best ethics possible and humanitarian possible. And then you should have a way for people to be able to apply their own regional culture to what actions they take or how they communicate. And it can teach you to do that better, no matter where you are, which should also be part of the overall. So definitely two prongs. It's not a one answer question.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I see Titi Lola, who joins us just right now. I would like you to introduce yourself briefly, and then we can continue this very lovely conversation. Kindly introduce yourself.
All right, thank you very much. I had some issues joining. My name is Titilola Olajede. I am an AI ethicist. I'm in the academia. My institution is National Open University of Nigeria. So I teach and research in AI ethics, and I do grant works in AI ethics as well. And of course, speak on panel and keynote sessions like this. I'm very happy to be here. So, to contribute to what Alison just said, I quite agree with her that AI ought to have universal ethical values without eliminating the possibility of having some regional ones. Because I also like to frame this in form of question that the implications or impact or influence of AI is not limited to a particular region. It's actually wide ranging. It affects our individual lives. So it's important that we think universal to begin with, because we also share universal human values, and we also have unity in our diversity. And so it's a common ground for us all to be able to tease out, to think and articulate the kind of ethical principles or ethical values we should infuse in our AI systems for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Wow, that is very profound, Titi Lola, and we welcome you. Alan, I see you have something to add to that. Kindly do.
Yes, I'd like to counter my colleagues on that. I think the idea of universal values is a kind of Western colonialist model. It extends to other countries with the belief that everybody's democratic, and so we're kind of at the tail end of the liberal hegemonic order, which is about 30 years of wars by the United States. And so that universal belief is what led the United States to invade countries and convert them into democracies. And that was a complete failure. And so the idea of espousing universal values is very kind of absurd at this time because they haven't been ratified in some galactic, council somewhere. They're just Americans saying that these are universal values. And so, and another thing, the second thing to add is that DeepSeek kind of changed that whole perspective because now all of us can download this AI into our homes. And so we have to train the AI. And it is up to us to train it with our own best ways possible. When AI first came out, people and developers used to say AI is like a child that you take to school and you have to kind of take it to kindergarten, then middle school, and then high school. And it's a training that you give an AI. And so, because of DeepSeek and the ability to download these models in your home or company without the need of an oligarchic American tech company, it means that we ourselves have to develop the ethics of that AI. And that's the future now. It's changed in the last week dramatically. I think the ethics now is on the responsibility of ethics is on our part individually.
And thank you for adding that. I see this is very heated. I'm going to give you Thomas and then over to you, Alison. But Thomas, please go.
Absolutely. Oh, I love the cat just jumping by the way. Very cool. Yeah, I think this is a really complex topic, and I love the fact that we have such a diversified opinion on this, especially as someone who works within a lot of I do human rights. I do a lot of work with people on a daily basis. I think the idea of universal ethics, I think there is an understanding of that. Right? We treat people well, we treat people kindly, we want to be good human beings. But I can also add into the idea that there are many people who would argue how we do that is different, how we look at the world is different. And I think with AI, especially, in its ways, it's been around for a while. It's been, we now have this access to it. One of the things that I think really needs to happen among AI is also a discussion of humanity, not just the AI itself or the ethics, but also an understanding, like if it is a child, how we can look at that through the lens of how can we program it for the betterment of our future, and how we as people can have conversations, not like angry conversations, like conversations like we're having now, kind, focused, deliberate ones, to understand how we can create ethics. And I think it's also really important to emphasize that we need to adjust these ethics as we go, right? Like even 100 years ago, our ethics were different than they are now. Our understanding of humanity is different. And as someone who wants to see AI implemented, especially for people who may not speak the way we do, or can't hold a ball, or a wide variety of different things, I think we need to understand that ethics is constantly evolving, and therefore our ethics towards technology in general, not just AI, need to be utilized in a constantly evolving but constantly empathetic and focused manner. And I think this is a conversation we need to have continually. If it's not every day or every week, it's one that we as human beings have with our intention, even yearly, monthly, or however we utilize it.
Okay, Thomas, thank you for highlighting that. And I love this panel because we've kicked in with a very diverse perspective. And when I'm hearing from all of you, I totally agree and think that Thomas has summed it up by saying, ethics evolve. We need to approach it with an evolving mindset with such conversations. And I also want to tag my GatherVerse community out here. We talk about humanity, and that is why we are here talking about everything that humanity needs to know about ethics. And Alison, you had something to say. Please add it on.
Actually, Thomas summed it up perfectly. I was just going to counter for a minute that when I speak of ethics and humanitarian efforts, it in no way is bringing the American democracy model to AI. It is the human model. So I just wanted to be very clear about that.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that. Let's talk about the side of biases. And I believe biases are just a reflection of who you are or who we are, whether we are Americans, Africans, Asians, whatever place we're from, biases are part of us and we have to acknowledge that. And AI is kind of reflecting that. And I want to bring this to you, Vivian. How might AI systems detect and challenge their own biases?
Thank you there, Lynn. What I feel strongly, and I've seen these cases with work with MIT and some other institutions, that the bias creeps in from human beings to these AI systems. AI is nothing but code and an algorithm that some people have put it down there. So there was this app a few years ago where people would upload their pictures, and you'd get superheroes and muscle men and really cool looking characters. And when women did that, it would objectify and really horrible outcomes that that would be embarrassed about to put them on social media and things like that. So there was a little bit of research done by a major researcher from MIT, and found out that the company had about 9,700 odd people. Out of that, uh, uh, some 60 or 70 of them were men developers in the Baltic region, and the women over there was one who was doing marketing, and the other one was in QA. So they were never responsible for adding data. So and many of these men were gamers or fans of Marvel and things like that. So that's the reason the AI that was built was completely from these perspectives of these gamers and Marvel fans, and they had not added any value from what would a woman be. So that bias of the developers creeped into the AI, and hence the outcomes. For AI systems to detect it, it's first to go back and put protocols for the developers, for the models that are being built, and put some governance rules and regulations right there to see that it is beneficial for everybody in all circumstances, for whatever it may be. There have been cases of, like, say, for example, identifying with the eyes or faces of women, and this was when I think Apple launched its card, and a lot of women were not given the financial benefit because she was a lady. And there's a case, I think it was published in New York, about a woman being denied some mortgage because of the same bias, wherein her husband, who was earning less and was in a different position, was approved of it, which clearly showed that there is bias that had creeped in. Of course, Apple changed its algorithm, and things improved, and it's way back. But since things are behind, does not mean they're erased. We need to make these corrections today, because today the scale is much larger. Like Alan was talking about DeepSeek, things aren't just the same. It's not centered around where these creeps up from within the system, but it is to take the step back, just to iterate that it is from the people that goes to the AI systems. And that is the challenge we need to address.
Yeah, I totally agree. And thank you for sharing those sentiments. Please, Brandon, I feel like you want to add something to
Yeah,
that. Do
yeah,
you want to chime in?
I do. I agree with that too. And I also think that from a practical standpoint, just from using the model and being able to see the chain of thought that the model uses. Like I like how DeepSeek shows what the model is going through and illustrating how it's arriving at whatever premise it's getting. So I think that just that level of transparency in these models, being able to see how they work through what they're doing would be helpful. But also, as Vivian said, I think that the biases are just going to reflect the cultural taste profiles that exist, kind of segueing from that previous question, what do we consider a bias? What one region or what one country or one culture considers a bias, another might consider this to be just a standard of living. And so I think we're already even seeing that in some of the models where people would say Claude is probably a little more sensitive to controversial topics than ChatGPT, and then DeepSeek has its own censorship, and then the ChatGPT has its own censorship. And so when we're really looking at these biases or establishing what biases is, it's going to have to come from some kind of global council like this, right? Where we all have our understanding of what that is and we share, and then we talk it through and establish like what's appropriate and come to some kind of common ground or universality.
Definitely, definitely. That was so powerful. I also want to add something to that. When we talk about bias, I feel like we are shifting biases from being not just humans, but also into machines. Um, Instead of eliminating bias, right? We're just shifting them over to something else, and that is machines. We're not eliminating them. And having these conversations, having you, Brandon, Vivian, and everyone who is watching us, and everyone who is just part of these discussions is critical and very crucial for us to address these. And I just want to add something that I'm seeing here on the comments that I'd love to read. Sheridan says originally mainframe programmers were women, then white men took over. In the 1960s, and Indians from the 1994, thus the embedded biases. Oh, thank you for that information, Sheridan. Then we have Venu, who says excellent. We have Christopher, shout out to Christopher, a global cloud consensus. Yes, this is what this is. And Metaverse WP says great information to understand the models of AI and developing personification of AI. The audience, keep engaging. Let's keep talking about this critical issue. Now, I want to jump into something very, very important because one of the previous talks, I think it's from Lisa, who shared some experiences of her and some of the things she has analyzed. And one of them was just simple things like going to the toilet or fixing the toilet. You use ChatGPT. How to cook, you use the toilet. You use ChatGPT. Excuse me. And this brings me to decisions. I think most of us, or part of the younger generation, will be using a lot of AI to make decisions. And this brings me to you, Thomas, or anyone who wants to chime in, and Titi Lola. Should AI ever be programmed to override human decisions? And in what scenarios can that happen?
Yeah, I'll go first. At the risk of committing fallacy of argumentum ad ignorantiam, there's appeal to ignorance because a thing is false. You say a thing is false because it hasn't been proven. I would like to put it mildly that the AI systems that we have presently, it shouldn't be that they should be programmed to override human decisions. Because if you look at many of the documents on AI ethics regulating it, they have a convergence around human oversight, human centeredness. So as we speak, it shouldn't be so programmed because it is reading with biases and prejudices that we've also talked about in the course of this session. Well, now for future purposes, maybe 10, 20 years when probably it's been so fine-tuned and we all can see that the level of bias, the level of stereotypes, the level of all the ills that are identifiable in AI systems now, if they have now gone down significantly, I would still hesitate to say that they should be programmed to override human decisions. But at that point, maybe we can now have the discussion all over again. But as they are, I would say we should be a lot more cautious in doing that.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I want to come to you, Thomas, then Alan, and then Brandon. This is very, very heated. I'm enjoying it. Thomas, kind of go.
First of all, I want to say, TT, you made some great points. There, I love a lot of that, and I agree. My main concern with the mindset of it overriding human decisions is my worry of people utilizing it as a scapegoat to a degree. I'm a big advocate that whatever tool human beings use should not ultimately become the fallout or responsible for what actions are done with it. I'm a big fan of human accountability, and I think we should understand that this is a tool. And in that, I think instead of overriding human decisions, it should be more of a collaborative mindset. We can use this as a back and forth. We can use this as a way to discover new perspectives, new ideas, or as a way to push ourselves to newer education. I know there are people out there who are worried about AI becoming like Skynet from the Terminator movies, or even just, right now, a big worry is that people are going to lose their jobs. And I think when we look at things within these really scary mindsets, we forget that this is a tool. This is something that we can utilize to better humanity and understand humanity better, especially when it comes to important decisions or like business decisions. But on top of that, I think there needs to be an understanding that this is not the human mindset. This is a program based off of human decisions and therefore is flawed, just like we are as human beings. None of us are completely perfect. And so I think as we go, even as we fine tune this, it should always be that collaborative. I love discussions. I love questions. I love the idea of understanding how we can do things better. And when it comes to that, I think we start overriding human decisions. We start overriding the human element of our decisions. And that human element is so integral to our world and how we behave with one another.
Okay, Thomas, thanks for sharing that. Alan, and then we move to
Yes,
Alison.
very
Yeah,
quickly,
great.
I just want to share a quick story to answer the question. I have two cars out in the garage. I'm in Texas. I have an old truck and I have a newer car. The newer car, when I kind of take to a change a lane, it corrects me. It does all sorts of corrections already for my safety. And I think how AI is going to kind of creep in and override human decisions is in things like this, where I'm changing lanes, or the other day the car brakes for me, right? And it did it really well. It may be too tight, but I think AI is going to be there for our safety in many ways, and to the point where we're just going to give it autonomy to drive us around, which is coming. So this is kind of the prep work for that. And in that sense, it's very good for our safety. It's very good for our benefit. It could do the same in surgery when the doctor is doing something with you, or operating, or nurses, or all these different professions that can benefit from AI. So I think there's many good uses for overriding human decisions.
Oh, wonderful. Alison.
I just want to say real quick, there are a couple of points that I think are important in the discussions of AI with everybody all the time in order to advance any of it. And one is I agree, we are not there yet. There are simple things that I will ask and I do not, and it doesn't calculate correctly. There's data that gets left out when I run a table. We are definitely not there yet, and it is absolutely up to people who use it to continue to train. You get out what you put in, and if there's more people training positively than negatively, I think it will be it's a tool, as Alan said, as Thomas said. We need to continue to do that. Another really important piece when you ask a question about like this override human decisions that was brought up was that there's a lot of people who really just fear that it's a replacement, and it is not a replacement. And I have had this conversation maybe 4 times this week, speaking with different people who don't use it, that they are very, very scared that this is going to replace them. It's going to take their job. It's going to take what they do, or it can't do it as well as they can. And so nobody, they're only concerned that people will think that it will. And we have to be really vigilant in saying this will help you be better. This is a tool for you. And if you're the person that understands how to use it for the purposes of this discussion with ethics, humanitarian, and also helping you create something better than you would have without it, I believe it will just continue to advance, to not take over, but just be a tool, as the woman said in one of the breaks, something that can make your life better and easier and save you time. It's just important that we talk about it in those terms, that it's a tool and we're not there yet. But when we get there, it's going to help us. I'm hoping in large calculations is one of the places, but like I said, I'm finding it's not there yet, even for that.
All right. Thank you for sharing that sentiment. Brandon?
Alan kind of said what I was going to say with the cars. I thought that aviation and driving, emergency response, I think there are some instances where AI is certainly more effective than a human being, where I would say, you know what, I'm going to go with the AI. But I think when there's elements of human intuition, I think about the scenario where it's a terrible scenario, but it's in one of the, I don't know if it's in game 3 or not, but you have 3 people falling, right? There's a mom, a dad, and a child. Which 2 do you save? And these kind of questions are very, very, very ethical, moral decision-making questions that, you ultimately program within a robot to do and make these decisions. If for all autonomous driving cars, a human split decision to make to brake, and the AI is calculating some kind of mathematical predictive indicator that says the child will be saved over the mother. And so these kind of things, I think, are I don't have an answer. I'm throwing that out there as just thoughts, but I think these are the things that we are going to be considering very, very soon. And anyway, that was just food for thought.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And what I've just gotten from that question and your remarks is collaboration. I agree with the collaboration aspect. Seeing AI as a collaborative partner, just like one of our speakers who said during the breaks. I agree. And also thank you, Titilola, for mentioning where the instances where AI shouldn't be allowed to override human decisions. And just to maybe highlight on replacing human beings, yesterday when Christopher was sharing about this summit, he mentioned something very, very powerful. And he said, there's something AI can't replace, and that is human expressions. What you're expressing from the heart right now, that is something AI can't beautifully replace, and much more. I want to bring this to you, Vivian. What ethical obligations do creators of AI have to future generations? Briefly.
Thank you, Lynn. I particularly feel that every developer, just like I said earlier, the obligations that creators have is to make sure, and more so for the generation now and the future to come, is to be human centered. Keep humanity at the center of your AI creation, and those tools to be of use, not mindless scrolling and taking away from their own time of thinking. And many people don't even think anymore in the younger generations. Like, cannot operate things. You always need a mobile phone to use common sense, for example, and so on. Uh, in general, I'm talking about, and this is across regions that I've traveled around the world. I see the same habits. So younger people need to get out there, have a balance of life, and these things should be kept in mind when you design your AI products or services, uh, and not prioritizing something else that happens to. I think the question change on the values. Yeah, but that's what's important.
Definitely. I totally agree with that. As a young person, I agree with that. And I want to jump to the next questions on human values. And I think we were talking about this in the first questions, and it got me wondering, what is human values, first of all, right? Alison, how can AI systems reflect human values without unintentionally prioritizing some over others? And anyone can jump in on this as well.
Well, as you said, it comes down to the balance. If you start with the issues of what are human values, global human values, as I said. We know that there are innate rights and wrongs. We do historically have people who may think that that have written that right and wrong is different to one person than to another. However, we, as a society, as a global society, there are human values that make you feel better than worse. So you can start there. Being in politics, this reminds me of my first gut feeling was that the unintentionally prioritizing some over others, we fall into that trap all the time. And as a matter of fact, it could probably be used for this question, but I wrote a GPT that had to do with legislation and had to do with how will the legislation that I'm reading right now unintentionally have bad consequences or loopholes. I call it legislative loopholes that I'm not seeing. So I'm trying to solve one problem, or a legislature or anywhere in the world is trying to solve one problem with this fix. I designed a GPT that will tell me how is it unintentionally prioritizing some over others. If I think about it, if you think about it that way. And I think it's important that we just really ask these questions. What are the unintended consequences of doing A versus B? And take in all the human elements into it rather than even depending on the AI to tell you what they are. You should really go back and look at all of it. And that's the best way that I can think of doing this, is that every time you do something that you think is a human value, how would this affect somebody else that I don't know about, completely on the other side of the world, or in a complete different culture? And that's really if you're going to tackle this question, that is how you have to do it, I believe.
I totally agree
You
with
might,
that. Okay. Please go. Please go.
I
Titi
mean,
Lola.
just to quickly
Alan,
add to what she said, we also need to be intentional about infusing the kind of values based on the quality of data into the AI system. So there ought to be some intentionality on our part as well, because AI is basically garbage in, garbage out. So the quality of our data should also be intentional, and it should be the quality of our data would determine the kind of output it gives us. So the kind of values we want it to project, that's what we would do. And so the intentionality goes back to us as humans.
That's right. Intentionality goes back to us, and we should just look at the greater good of everyone. Vivian, then Alan. I see you, Alan. I'm coming to you. Vivian, please go. Then you.
yeah, I had a very funny situation yesterday where, the AI unintentionally prioritized and created something which was not even part of the discussion. So I use this hardware AI note taker sometimes, and it used to do a great job till some time. But last couple of weeks, particularly this year, I've seen that, like, for example, yesterday, just to keep the story short, we were talking about module by module creation of a particular system for a AI startup, and the summary talked about brick by brick laying a new road for the city municipal corporation. There's absolutely no connection between the outcome and the discussion. So it prioritized, I don't know from where it picked up bricklaying versus modules in a software, uh, and spit that out. Uh, so to say that, it goes back to the responsibility on us, the creators, on what values and what are the guardrails that you're putting so that unintentional things doesn't happen. And last but not the least, a few days ago I read that scientists or researchers were baffled that AI could predict some, gender by the eyeballs scans. Over to you, Alan.
Oh, thank you. That was great insights. I think we all have to reckon with the change that happened this past week, where we were all very happily living under a top-down approach to this technology, and now we have to live and gather all of these ethics and all these responsibilities within ourselves, because it's a bottom-up approach. Because now, with very little computing power, you can have your AI at home. You can have it in your company, running your company. And so these ethics, work ethics, your home ethics, all of these things are going to come down to your responsibility and how you were raised. And it's going to reflect a lot of how you were raised in your ways. And so the whole idea of universal anything to me is just out the window. I've personally lived in 10 countries. I've backpacked 80 countries. I've been in countries and regions where lying is not part of the culture. So you can't actually implement a legal system like the one we have. Because when you have, this is East Timor and Indonesia, the United Nations shows up and tries to put in a tribunal, but nobody has in their culture the instinct of lying. Lying doesn't exist. So this is a completely different culture from us. And to the idea of putting universals is absolutely an outrage to me. I think it's going to be a bottom up world. It's a new world. We have to deal with it. We have to assume the responsibility ourselves. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I believe that's the case. The responsibility boils down to us as human beings. I just want to even follow up with another question that is the next one, and I want to bring you Thomas and Brandon on this. What happens when AI generated solutions conflict with widely accepted human morals? Briefly, Thomas.
Um, Definitely. I think one of the things, and this has been said a lot, is the idea of intentionality. I think when we have AI generated, the best ways to respond to that is to think it through, to understand what you're doing, how you're going to do it, and not just automatically.
Okay, I guess we lost you.
Yeah, looks like.
Okay, Brandon, please take it on.
Yeah, I was actually, this is a good question because I was in the barbershop maybe a week ago and I was having a talk. I'm like the AI guy for a lot of people. So we're in the barbershop talking and it's a relatively like Christian community. So I asked, hey, would you guys be comfortable getting the word of God from ChatGPT? And of course, like this sent the entire barbershop into an outrage, just thinking like, no, absolutely not. And it just got me thinking about what many of us will consider is appropriate to run in some of these tools, or what information we extract from these tools, and what will be I think a highly politicized thing once widespread adoption happens. As more people start to use it and we start to identify more use cases for how people are using it, some people are going to establish an opinion in terms of what kind of information is coming out of it. And we're going to have very difficult decisions around how we legislate what comes out of the machine. And so to Alan's point, I don't think there's a real way to be able to determine that for other people, other than, we're going to treat it like nuclear weapons, right? You don't want to use it for autonomous weapons, or you don't want to use it as a weapon of mass destruction. Maybe we land in somewhere like that. But I think there's honestly going to be different tools, different models for different taste profiles. Like I said, we're seeing that happen already with how we interface with some of the models now. And I think that's just going to grow.
Thank you for sharing that. Thomas, you're sharing something. And before we just get back to you, I also want you to take up on this question. Should AI have a role in addressing inequality, or could it unintentionally create more divides? And also, Titilola, Alison, you can jump on this. Thomas, please take it on as you continue with what you were expressing previously.
Absolutely. And I apologize if my internet broke up. Sometimes we have bad internet in my area. But I do think, yeah, I think that it should have a role in addressing inequality. I think that Brandon said this really well, and I'll try to be quick just so I don't eat up all our time. But I've said this a lot in my life. I think that AI needs to be a tool to help those who face inequality on a regular basis. I work with those who don't are described as nonverbal, though I don't like that term. I know many people who can't write with a pencil due to their own experiences and diagnosis. And I think AI as a tool has this potential to be a massively lucrative side of helping those in need. I know it's often marketed in some really ugly ways, doesn't always get pushed to that community. But I also think it's going to create divide no matter what. Like no groups of human people, even with 10, may completely agree on everything, and I think it's important to note that. But I think what we need to do when there is those divides is have those conversations, honor the opinions that are there, and utilize the tool as a resource to also help bridge those divides and create education, even if it's in a small group, a large group,
Okay, that's a
and therefore should be utilized as such.
okay. Thank you for that remark. Alison, please add to what you were saying, then to you, Titi Lola.
So I agree with Thomas. I always come at this, of course, from the perspective of women. And when in inequality, what AI, I believe, can do is help find a way to talk about it. It comes back to messaging, it comes back to discussions. One of the books that I've read recently, which is just extremely fascinating, is called Invisible and the Invisible Woman. And we have, when we talk about standard guidelines or standard morals, or how cultures just have been taught from birth how their culture is, and there are things that they innately grow up with. We have so many things in a lot of cultures. I will stick with the US with this, where we have designed systems and we have designed user even our cars, anything that we talk about, are designed from the male perspective. Offices, desks, when we're talking about cars, the seatbelts are designed certain ways. There are so many women that can't identify what a heart attack is for them, because it looks different than the norms we've thought for, that are based for what it looks like for a man. And I really do believe that if we ask the questions of the AIs, they will help us re-message and give us a new perspective for how to talk about this, which is part of what's been going on for a very long time. We just don't know how to talk about it. And I do have trust in AI to be able to reframe and re-message things that can change. It can go even with war. I don't thoroughly believe that if women were always in charge, there would be no wars. I've never bought into that. But I do believe there are ways that we can put in questions to the systems and come up with a better way to talk about it. So for that, I think it can actually address inequality. There will always be unintentional creations from it. We have to be vigilant about that too. But I do have faith that it will help in that area.
Oh, thank you for sharing your trust in AI and your confidence in its ability to even shift. Titi Lola, with your closing remarks, please share your
Yeah,
thoughts on this topic.
yeah. The reality on ground is that it's actually worsening existing inequality, widening existing divides. However, we hold the power as humans to channel it to the course we want it to take. And the way to go about that is, I would emphasize the idea of openness and transparency by developers, and a collaborative approach in which developers and the ethicists or various relevant stakeholders, they collaborate. This idea of hyping, anthropomorphization, and hasty deployment of AI systems, we need to look critically into that, because when an AI system is open and transparent, devoid of opaqueness and black box, it would be open to review, to audit, and ensure that we are putting values, especially as it relates to this question, that we are infusing it with the quality of data that could help it to address inequality, and not continue to worsen it, or even emphasize it, or even emphasize stereotypes that we have in the world. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that remark. And I couldn't have said it better. You've summed up the whole panel in a very, very profound way. Openness, transparency, and not hyping it up, right? The answer is. And I also believe accountability and taking responsibility, everyone taking responsibility. And I just want to read some few comments before we close this panel. I believe it was very, very impactful, insightful, very, very engaging. I think we could go long for this, but we only have little time for this. So we have Olun saying Alan's point of view seems to stimulate perspectives from the other side. I like the way he broaches the idea of universality. Human values are relative. How do you universalize what is relative? Thank you. Sheridan, people will always tailor AI. Example, rap AI, Bollywood AI. That's a very good perspective. We have another perspective from Metaverse WP. Back in the day, the Altspace VR established a church, and we have international fellowship. It was beautiful. Wow, people having churches with this kind of technology. And Brandon, you added something to this. I think this is a very good closing remark. AI should be public utility and productivity gains should be shared. Dear panelists, it was such a very wonderful time to have you with us. We're looking forward. We welcome you once again to GatherVerse. We love you and we respect your time, and we really honor the time that you spend with us. I think over to you, GatherVerse team. I will gather as well for this panel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.